Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Jonas Fasching. I'm a music producer from Switzerland, and today I want to demonstrate you how I produce my pad sounds. Now I'm gonna produce actually 3 different pads to show you how I work. And for that I chose 3 different synthesizers that I want to show you. The first one is Diva by Yuhe. I really love this synthesizer. You can use it for a lot of different things. I use it for bass, I use it for lead sounds, but this time I want to use it for a pad sound. Now, the second synthesizer that I want to use is Analog by Ableton, because if you don't have Diva, you can still profit from this video if you're working with Ableton. And the third synthesizer is SEM by Arturia, and this is a special synthesizer, but I really love it too. I really love the sound of it. And it is actually modeled after the real SEM by Oberheim. And yeah, it's a really nice and not overcomplicated synthesizer, so you can get a result quite quickly, which also sounds really nice. And I already prepared a drum loop and a bass that I want to play along, because it's just much more fun to produce a pad if you already have something playing behind it. So yeah, it's just this kind of housey, groovy beat. And I also already prepared the chord progression that I want to use for these pad sounds. Now I'm not going to go into that, how I composed this chord progression on here, but if you want to learn how to compose chord progressions, I already made a video in the past, so just click this link right here. Now let's just grab the headphones and, most importantly, a coffee, and just get comfortable and let's get going. So when I open up Diva, the first thing that I'm always doing is go to patches, and then here under templates, I always choose this mini mono template. So this just resets the whole device basically, and it models it after this Moog sound, I think. Now on here, on this panel, you can also change the different modules over here. So you can have different modules, and here I really like to work with the analog module, because if I work with the ADS envelope, I only have the attack, the decay and the sustain, but I really like to have a separate release as well. So that's why I'm always working with this. Now let's hear how that sounds like. So now we have to set it to poly, because it is a poly sound, right? Pad sounds, they're composed of multiple notes often. Let's turn down the volume a little bit, and also the filter. And now let's actually shape this envelope right here. So the first envelope shapes the volume of the synthesizer. Now you can also do the same with the filter. And this here is the amount of how much this envelope will trigger the filter. And I'm also gonna choose 16 voices over here. So this chord progression is only made up out of 4 or 5 notes, but sometimes they overlap each other in the end, and then it's nice to have multiple voices or more than 5 voices. Now we already have here one oscillator playing with a sawtooth wave, and let's actually add another oscillator right here. And let's pitch that up by 1 octave. And let's change the shape of it. And detune it a little bit. This detuning, it sounds really nice with pad sounds, I think, because it just makes it more organic, more human basically, and more analog. I mean, Diva is really like trying to be an analog synthesizer. If you want to have more like clean and digital sounding sounds, I think Serum is better. But for this type of pads that I want to achieve, I really like to use Diva, because it just has this analog character already by itself. Now, down here we have a lot of different options, of course. What I really love to use is the vibrato. And then the vibrato actually gets triggered by this LFO1 here. The depth of the LFO gets triggered now by the mod wheel, but I don't want that. So I'm just gonna like put this all the way to 0. And now when I use the vibrato, this LFO triggers basically the... Let's just speed that up a little bit. Now also this particular setting just makes it more human and more warm and just gives it more this organic character. Now let's actually also modulate the filter a little bit with a LFO. So it just opens and closes the filter a little bit. And this is actually LFO2, which is down here. And here you can set the rate of it. And what's really cool now is that you can actually also change this rate with another input, basically. So you could use another LFO to trigger the LFO, basically. But what I like to use, for example, is the key follow. So depending on the key that you press, the LFO moves faster or slower. And this just really sounds very nice also when you play pad sounds. And what's also really nice is because I now have multiple notes playing at the same time, right? So every note of them has a different rate of the LFO. And this just makes this really nice movement of it. And also just add a little bit of delay to it, so it just doesn't start already at the beginning. Now what's also really nice about the synthesizer that here in the trimmer section you can actually access every different voice of every oscillator and pitch them up or down a little bit. And it looks more complicated than it actually is. So these 8 knobs up here, they are for the 8 voices of the first oscillator, and these 8 knobs here are the voices for the second oscillator, and so on. And here's the detune amount. So if you have that set to 0, it won't do anything, right? But if you put that all the way up, you get this very strange, detuned sounds basically. But you don't have to go all the way. And you can just like use this knob right here to use the amount of this detuning that you want. So right now this pad is still in mono, because when I look at it on a spectrogram, let's just do that. Let's just play it and open this spectrogram right here. I can see it's still in the middle and it has no stereo effects on it. So I want to change that a little bit by going back to the main tab, and then on here you can do different modulations for the amplifier and for the panning. And the panning just says if something is left or right. So now it's left, now it's right. But you can also modulate the panning with a different input. And here it now gets really interesting, because what I can do now is I can say that every individual voice that we saw before has to be on this stereo spectrum on a particular place. So I'm just gonna use here the voice map. And now, when I go back to the trimmer section, I can now say which voice has to be where on the stereo spectrum. So let's add it. That sounds so nice. I love that sound. Because now every individual voice is just like somewhere on the stereo spectrum, and it just makes this really nice, warm, white sound that you cannot really achieve with any other effect, in my opinion. So nice. And now, if you look at the spectrogram again, we have a lot of information on the side. Alright, that sounds really nice. Now another cool thing about Diva is that it already has effects on it. Now it's quite limited, we only have like 5 effects or something, but let's actually also add a little bit of chorus just to make it even more wider. And now let's also use a plate reverb right here. Right, now let's actually listen to it with the drum and with the bass together. Alright, that sounds really nice. Now let's actually add the LFO tool to it. So we just add a little bit of ducking on the kick. And I also already prepared another reverb down here with the Valhalla reverb. I really like to use that plugin as well. And let's just add a little bit of that to this pad. Let's just cut away a little bit the low end because, yeah, as I expected, there's always something going on. I don't know what it is, but like you see that down here. I think it has something to do with, I'm actually not sure what it is, but it had, yeah, let's just cut it away. And let's also cut the reverb a little bit in the low end. Another trick that you could do is actually also really nice. You could make a really long reverb like this, like 10 seconds for example, and then you just make it mono again, the reverb. So let's just use a utility plugin after the reverb and put this to mono. And now when you listen to it with the pad, it just gives this like 3-dimensionality effect because the pad is wide, but then the reverb is like far down, so it's like a tunnel. And right, so let's move on to the next pad and let's use analog this time. So let's just mute this Diva pad for once and let's focus on the analog. So also here I just start out with a default patch and work my way from there. So this is how it sounds now. Alright, so let's get going. So this middle tab right here actually always changes depending on the module that you're on. So on this tab here I want to max out the voices as much as I can. This is the filter right here. Now what I really like to do on the analog is just also boost the gain of the oscillator, because like this the filter gets like driven really hot. You don't hear it so good, but it just like gets saturated a little bit. If I change it to, for example, this one, yeah, you can hear it quite nicely. It's just like overtones that get generated. Now let's also change the curve on this one. And now let's actually use the LFO to trigger the frequency of the filter again. So if you press on the filter, you can do that down here. Let's put re-trigger, so every time the note hits, the LFO gets re-triggered. Let's add some vibrato right here. So you can actually also modulate the frequency of the filter with the keys. So depending on the key that you press, the filter opens or closes more. And I just like to have like the top notes coming through the filter a little bit more than the bottom notes. So if I just move it a little bit up, you can hear the higher note is like louder than the bottom note, because the filter is just different on each individual note. And also the same I want to do with the panning right here. Let's add some noise maybe. Let's try it out. With noise, I just found out that I have to be careful because it generates a lot of low sounds. So if I look at it on a spectrogram again of this Pro Q3 here, if I turn off the noise, we don't really have this low things going on. But if I add the noise, we have this constant low rumble that just stays there. So I'm just gonna cut this away as well. Let's actually change the rate of the LFO. That sounds nice already. Let's add some reverb. Let's actually use another reverb because we already used that on the first pad. So I'm just going to put a reverb directly on the channel. Let's also use some ducking again. Let's actually try to move up all of these notes by 1 octave. And then let's move it back to the center a little bit, because all the high notes are now getting played on one side. Alright, so now let's move to the third pad that I want to do with SEM. So let's mute the other two synthesizers right here. So this is how SEM looks like. It has two oscillators. They are located right here, and additional sub oscillator that you can add. And it is a bit tricky to understand at the beginning maybe, because the mixer is actually down here. So you can like activate the oscillators down here, and you can choose between saw and pulse wave. And if it's in the center, the oscillator is basically muted. So like this, you can hear nothing. And when you now go to one side, it's just the volume of the wave form basically. So this is pulse and this is saw. And here's the filter. So low pass filter right now. And I actually want to make now with this pad, I want to make it like shorter and maybe add delay on it. So it's like more these like swells. So let's turn down the sustain. And also for the filter, you can have this envelope here that you can add to basically modulate the frequency. Let's add another oscillator. And let's also turn on the portamento, so the notes now glide from one note to the other. And the noise on this synthesizer actually sounds also really nice. Let's just remove a little bit of the low end again. And if you up here press advanced, you can also enter different settings of the effects. Let's add some overdrive as well. So damping just takes away the higher frequencies of the overdrive. We have two LFOs. LFO 1 is down here. It's a bit hidden. I actually looked for it quite a long time when I was opening this synthesizer for the first time. Because LFO 2 is here, but then where is LFO 1? But it's actually here in between these two envelopes. And up here we also have this 8-voice programmer, which is really nice because here every time a note gets played, a particular value gets sent out to a parameter that you adjust. So for example, you can choose the frequency of the filter and just say every time a note gets pressed, the filter frequency gets adjusted by this value right here. Let's turn it on. You can also turn off these different steps right here. And over here you can change the mode. So how it should run through the different values. Let's put it to random. Let's also add some reverb to that. I think we can make this really dreamy, so let's just... Let's put some compression on this. So yeah, now we have this rich soundscape out of these 3 pads right here. And of course, when you arrange it, you can also like modulate different parameters. So let's just do that right now for this loop. So let's, for example, just modulate here the cutoff frequency of this filter. Let's also, on the analog, do the same for the frequency as well. And now let's also modulate here the reverb a little bit. So on the part where this like wobbling starts to come up, let's just send it into the reverb right there. So now I actually also just want to add a little bit of a delay on this Diva here, where this LFO starts to like wobble a little bit. Because I just want these things to continue a little bit, to fizzle out. So I'm just gonna add another return track and use the Echo Boy on here. And I really like this space echo setting actually. So let's hear how that sounds like. And let's also add some saturation on this Diva here, because I think it would be nice if the higher frequencies just cut through a bit better. So I'm gonna use this VSM3 here. So we really created this like spheric sounds basically that just set really the mood of this track, and just like, yeah, it gives this really nice atmosphere. And that's what I like to use pads for, you know, like just these subtle and like very nuanced things that just happen on the song sometimes and just pop up here and there. So yeah, this is it. I hope that you could take away something from this video, and maybe you can use one of these techniques on your next track. If you like this video, please subscribe to my channel for further videos like this one in the future. And yeah, see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.